Welcome to the Deep End. I'm your host, Richard Grove. Did you know that when the too big to fail banks don't make a profit, American taxpayers pay the big banks to stay in business to the tune of $83 billion a year? So what happens when Congress is left out of the loop, or worse, bought off by lobbyists and special interests who are printing money out of thin air and charging you as they bribe their way into control? This Bloomberg article from 2011 points out it's easy to give another $13 billion to the banks, charge the taxpayers, and keep Congress in the dark. If these banks can circumvent Congress, can they also act above the law and be immune from prosecution? If so, I think it's important to learn more. Today we're going to talk with a whistleblower from one of those too big to fail banks, HSBC, which, along with 28 other banks, is part of the too big to fail list of protected cartels. What makes HSBC so special? Well, first, it's a London-based multinational bank, and here's how it began. Quote, "The Hong Kong and Shanghai Bank was founded in the then British colony of Hong Kong in 1865, benefiting from the start of trading into China, including opium trading." End quote. What if, instead of the banks dabbling in laundering drug money, it was really those who control the black markets creating the banks to launder their money in the first place? And now they're getting all of us to pay for it. Could it actually be worse than we're being told? And if it is, what can we do about it? To answer these questions, I'll be speaking with whistleblower and author John Cruz. John is a former senior vice president of business relations at HSBC. His website is worldbankingworldfraud.com. I invited John here so that he can explain directly to you how he discovered a multi-trillion-dollar fraud, how this fraud is being protected, how it works, who profits from the plundering of American wealth, how the fraud is funding terrorism, and what we can do to curb the culture of corruption. This is the Deep End. Let's dive into consciousness. What was your position at HSBC? What did they hire you to do?
My position was Senior Vice President, Business Relations. As a business relationship manager, you would manage the businesses, business accounts, personal accounts, the whole aspect of the individual's cash flow, the whole aspect of the corporation's cash flow. That's what you did.
And
where's money coming from? Where's money going to?
Okay. And then what did you blow the whistle on?
I blew the whistle on money laundering, tax evasion, identity theft. Identity theft of the public, the world. As far as identity, I'm talking social security numbers. I'm talking tax ID numbers. I'm talking about everyone's life in the everyday world of them using them, the bank, using the world's identity.
And is this something that just affects Americans, or is this a global problem?
This is global. This is in every country. HSBC banks in 190 countries. They are laundering money around the world, all countries, for terrorists, for illegal crimes, Iran, Iraq, Colombia, or any country they're in, they are the king of cash. They got the name king of cash because they launder the money to make it clean.
Well, there's a lot to jump into. Before we do that and get into the history and the history of your story, is there a moral hazard to not taking action in this case?
Yes, there is, because there's nothing being done about it. And all these illegal crimes are because of our government allowing it to take place. I mean, a bank that's too big to fail, that has the power to control your identity, my identity, your company's identity, to create other corporations around the world that you don't know about, and to lobby that money to Congress is a very serious hazard.
Are they using some level of sophistication to assume that people know about these risks, that it's caveat emptor, and that people who are engaging in this fraud say, well, they can only commit fraud because the people are allowing it?
I don't know exactly if the people are allowing it, but they are showing a blind eye to it. The government knows they're doing it. They can see they're doing it. I mean, if I can find it and I can see it, I gave it to the government. I gave Homeland Security, the United States Treasury, Department of Justice, a step by step on how money is laundered around the world, showing them all these facts to do nothing is a tragedy, huge tragedy.
What's at stake here?
A whole national security, a whole world of life. It's all about the money. The money is there and it's corrupting our governments, which is bleeding down to the people. And that's how people are being so powerful in this world. These big people, they're so powerful because they have the money and they're using us to get it. And once they get the money, they're all working together in cahoots and destroying our world the way it is.
Where did you work before HSBC?
I used to work in credit unions. I used to take over credit unions, defunct credit unions, and work for credit unions with businesses to where you learn how to take care of people. The big people were not taken care of.
And how long did you work at HSBC? When did you start there?
January 2008, I started. February 2010, I was terminated.
And what were your responsibilities? You described it briefly in the beginning, but for the audience, when they get a call from a bank, are you calling end users, like individuals, or are you calling other corporations? Explain to them, are you on like the commerce side or on the individual side or the corporate side?
I'm actually on all sides. I'm calling up the corporations. I'm talking to the business owners. I'm talking to them about their customers they have, reaching out to the customers to bring in new customers, dealing with personal individuals as their clients also. So you're dealing with the whole aspect of the business as if you're actually managing the entire business. Their cash flow, where's the money coming from? Where's the money going to? How are the employees being treated? What's the business going to be like in 5 years? I mean, if you're going to give them a loan, are they going to pay back the loan within 5 years? Are they going to stay in business? You need to know about their reputation. You check their Facebook account, their Twitter accounts. You check everything about this business, everything about the individual owners, everything about their board of directors, everything.
So really, in your position, you had a Edward Snowden type of access where you could see all the financial details across a wide spectrum of people, corporations. And so that's where you're drawing these patterns from that we'll talk about through the episode, that you saw some things that you saw as anomalies that were fraudulent and or criminal. And can you talk about what in your daily work did you start seeing and what started to raise your awareness?
What started to raise my awareness is that when you have a business, and let's say you're my customer and I have to manage your business for you, but before I come to see you, I'm going to do a little more background check on you. I'm going to check your transactions on your accounts. I'm going to look at your cash flow. I'm going to try to find out any accounts you have. So what I would do is I'd take your social security number, type it into a computer to see if you have any other accounts out there. Well, when your social security number matches hundreds and thousands of other individuals that you have no idea what's about, and you're listed on their accounts. And I'll give you a perfect example. I had a lot of attorney accounts. An attorney has escrow accounts, which means if you do business with that attorney, they're going to put money into an escrow account. Or if you're buying and selling a home, they're going to open an escrow account. and the attorney opens up an escrow account in a bank. And the individuals are listed under that escrow account in individual accounts. So I would see other accounts beyond those accounts of the individuals listed as unidentified. And I would see hundreds of millions and billions to trillions of dollars going through these accounts around the world. And they would just say money from, transfer in, transfer out. And they would just not complete as far as what the money was from. Then you couldn't find it where the money was coming from. You couldn't find it where it was going to. You had money going in and out of PayPal, American Express every day in denominations. I mean, on your account alone, you could have millions going through PayPal, American Express in 20, 30, 40, 50, $100,000 denomination, even numbers every day. But you as the main account holder in your main account could not see those accounts because they're coded not to print statements, not to have access to, and they're labeled as unidentified. So when you see an account with $1 billion going through it one day, and you have hundreds of thousands of social security numbers attached to that one account, very suspicious.
Well, and you've seen the commercials in the past where they said drugs fund terrorism. And so what comes up in your mind when you see all these unaccounted for, vaguely described, huge transactions that are, from your knowledge, hidden from most other people?
what comes up in my head is, oh my God, what am I in the middle of? And I can't get rid of these accounts. My superiors will not allow me to get rid of these accounts. I'm supposed to have suspicious activity reports filled out. I'm not allowed to fill them out. Corporate does it. They're supposed to do it, but they don't do it. I mean, it's just a total. I look at the accounts and I look, this is a perfect crime. Because if the bank gets caught with these transactions, they're not doing it. You are. It's your name, your social, your tax ID. They have all the documentation signed through your attorney to open an account. So who's to blame then?
I guess, when you discover that, you must think, well, surely there's a regulatory agency that's supposed to watchdog it. And you also know that the special activities report, I mean, in our culture, it's common knowledge that anything that's over $10,000 has to be reported as suspicious activity because of the whole CIA drugs, intervention in the 1980s and 90s. All the drug money laundering from Central and South America that started going and flowing through the United States. I think that's the origin of the special activity reports. And so to be working for a multinational, UK-owned multinational bank that's saying, hey, all this stuff is off the books and you can't file these reports, and you were being told to break the protocol because the protocol is you file the report, right? Did you ask yourself why they were breaking protocol?
Too big to fail is a legal term for I do whatever I want, screw you. That the government allows them. Simple as that. And I was not the one to fill out the reports. The bank individuals above me were the ones to fill out the reports. This is how they create a system of crime. They just make it so they can control it 100%. And they do not. Too big to fail means you are too big to be prosecuted. So therefore, you will pay a fine, and a fine is not a fine. It's a cost of doing business with the government. We pay off the government, we give them whatever they want, and the money does not come from the bank. $1.9 billion fine, HSBC did not pay a $1.9 billion fine. The investors paid a $1.9 billion fine. The bank paid nothing.
And that's withheld from the investors. Most people who own stock in that bank do not know that they're the ones paying for that, and that there's no tracing, there's no audit trail. Once that payment was made to the government, they can't find it, right?
United States Congress doesn't even know where the money went. It went through the Obama administration, Loretta Lynch, Eric Holder, and Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton. Nobody knows where the money went other than those individuals.
The too big to fail banks, this movement of banks that are above the law, it includes 29 banks, several of which are United States banks. HSBC seems to be an Asian bank, but it's a London-based corporation, and it goes back to the opium wars, which we can touch on. And I also want to touch on Lynch and Holder and their involvement in this in a couple minutes. But the next question I had relating to your work was, so you had the special activity reports that should have been generated from what you were putting up the chain of command, and they weren't being generated. Then you noticed semantic errors in the naming of accounts. Could you explain to the audience how just putting an extra period or a dash or doing these different things to accounts can obscure them from people searching? Because what I really want to get to is the audit trail that is erased as they do these crimes so that it prevents them from really being prosecuted.
Well, when you're doing things like a dash and a dot, you put them in certain places within a computer system, you're creating a coding system. So when I go in and I create accounts for customers to launder money, and I open the account on May 1st, and I want to launder $1 billion this month through certain accounts. So I launder the money. On June 1st, I will go back into those accounts that have that period of dashes and have my computer system close those accounts April 30th, the day before they were open, because the money has already transpired and taken place and transferred around the world. Now the transactions in the accounts will be terminated from the system.
That's the perfect way to cover up anything. Oh, yeah. I mean, they play on the law of identity, and then they erase the audit trail by having the account closed the day before you opened it.
The biggest part of it is you're not doing a suspicious activity reports on either end of the transaction. So nobody's going into looking for the money because there is no suspicious activity reports done.
And there's no audit trail left behind to say that this account was deleted or anything else, right?
No, it's not. And the senior auditors in HSBC Bank told me point blank, we do this, we keep 10% on the side, and that's what the payment to the U.S. government.
Why on earth did you start recording the conversations of people that you were dealing with within the company?
When I first found this out, my first day, I found a fraudulent account. I asked for the account to be removed and reported to senior security. So I closed the account. The next day, the account was reopened in my name, as if I was doing the transactions for the customers. I said, and I was very upset. And I've used to take over credit unions that did fraudulent activities. And so from that point on, I decided to record all conversations with employees, with executives, with congressional congressmen, with with attorneys, with anyone, law enforcement, Homeland Security, Treasury agents. I have so many recordings. I recorded everyone.
Did you find that because the telephone calls are outside of the recorded audit trail that the corporation usually keeps on hand, that was the place where if somebody might say something to you in email, but then on a phone call, they'll tell you to do something different, so that what's left behind is one account, and then what's left in the phone calls are what people were actually doing? That would be a good reason to figure out how to capture that.
What they did on paper was totally different from what they said in voice recordings. Voice recording goes straight out talking to me, telling me what's there, telling me exactly what's going on. On the audit trails, paperwork, they try to hide everything.
On my road to being a whistleblower under Sarbanes-Oxley, I was selling Sarbanes-Oxley compliance software that all these corporations were supposed to have to protect them from fraudulent activities being accumulated. And during that process, what you find out is that is a method of obscuring the data from those who are supposed to be investigating it. So in your opinion, is it more dangerous to have all this digital money and all this digital capability because it obscures things from fraud as opposed to analog cold hard dollars and cash being traded? Does the digital world give them more of an advantage in perpetrating the fraud?
Digital world is a perfect world for them. They can do whatever they want because they control the data. They control. The worst part is law enforcement gives the bank the total 100% control of the investigation of the money laundering. When I gave all my documents to district attorneys, they said we will contact the bank and have them do an audit on your complaint. What does that mean? You're saying to the criminal, please investigate yourself and let us know if you find out if you did anything wrong.
And then the audit under Sarbanes-Oxley says, here's all this prepackaged information that they've captured, when in the midst of that, the real data that they want to hide is deleted and never recorded in those files. That's what I found through my experience.
That's correct. Exactly what they do.
And as far as the digital age being more of an open market for the fraud and criminals to actually have enough money to buy off the people who are supposed to investigate them, I'd point out Enron and Tyco and the TARP bailouts. I mean, we've had more fraud in the 21st century than all the rest of history combined. What have you seen in your experience?
You're totally correct. Fraud is everywhere. It's taking control of our government. It's taking control of our senior people that control our lives. So what do? We need change.
Now, if you knew the world was run by too big to fail, too rich for jail, would you have still blown the whistle, or would you have kept your cushy job?
If I didn't blow the whistle, I would be the one that would be in trouble. I'd be the one to go to jail.
Yeah.
And I was stated in the courts. I had to blow the whistle. I had to report the bank for doing fraudulent activities. Otherwise, I would go to jail for me committing the fraudulent activities, not the bank.
Yeah, once I started raising red flags and sending emails and making phone calls, all of a sudden I noticed that there was business being done in my name with clients, and the clients would call me up and say, well, we're, being told this over here. Is this really what's going on? And I discovered, that's a hostile work environment. I needed to escalate my claims. Unfortunately, I was still naive enough to think that the parent company that had just bought my company would be interested in that fraud. Instead, I found out that's why they bought the company.
That's correct. That's exactly what I do.
Let's talk about the Rolling Stone articles. Originally, Matt Taibbi had done an article on HSBC and basically saying that, HSBC and Goldman Sachs were the series of articles showing how they were just sucking the lifeblood out of this country. More recently, in 2012, there was the outrageous HSBC settlement that proves the drug war is a joke. Are you familiar with that article?
Oh, yes, I am.
What is it that Matt is pointing out that you agree with?
He's pointing out that the drug war is a joke because the drug war is making trillions and billions of dollars and paying fines to governments, to other entities as a cost of doing business. Why are we not seizing the complete? Why is it, example, HSBC Bank is the king of cash, king of money laundering. Why are they still open? Why do we not just shut them down, seize their assets completely, and put all the executives in jail? Why? Because we're afraid of losing a couple thousand jobs. These jobs were all set to be taken over by other banks. These jobs were all set to be taken over by little banks. We will survive and be better, 110% better than having this bank in business. We should shut it down. And any bank that is involved in any situation, such as like HSBC, should go along with them. Shut them down, putting executives in jail.
I agree totally. I've seen the same from my perspective in history. Looking at these companies in hindsight, after I got out of the corporate world in 2003, I learned that there is a common thread between these too big to fail banks, too rich for jail. There is a common thread of history that permeates up. Before I get to that, I want to talk a little bit about the path of escalation as a whistleblower you went through at HSBC before you get to the outside agencies. How did you react? Did you tell your manager? How did it escalate? What did they tell you?
First thing was first person I always go to is your manager. Went to my manager, reported the fraudulent activity taking place. He told me I was crazy. He says, this is ungodly real. This doesn't happen. So I showed him the accounts and everything. He said, okay, just take them out of your name, which I did. I took the accounts out of my name, only to have them put back in my name.
Right.
By senior executives above him. When that happened, I went to another executive, district executive. My district executive tells me that my manager is just trying to cover things up. Okay. So he got me in line with security. George Matrenga. My first manager was Mike Jenkins. And I brought that information to district executive James Young. James Young didn't know what was going on, so he referred me to security. He goes, when a situation's something like this, the manager's just covering in his ass, and he couldn't stand Mike Jenkins. He said, that's all he does is cover his ass, that's it. So he brought me over to George Matrenga, senior security. George Matrenga turns around, a conversation with him was the senior executives above him only allow him to give 10% of the information to law enforcement. And that 10 information, law enforcement will never, ever be able to use because it is very discombobulated, very confusing, cannot understand.
So for 90% of the cases, they're like, let those go through. 10% we're going to send over to the authorities, but we're not going to give them enough information to actually take action. And so they have this self-preservation loop built into the infrastructure. Is that what you're describing?
Correct. Exactly what they do.
Did you suffer any forms of retaliation while you were trying to escalate your concerns?
Immediately following my first reporting of the illegal activities at the bank, I was being written up for not doing my job. Right after it. Totally crazy. Now, like I said, all these meetings, all these here voice recordings and all, I put a lot of voice recordings on my website, worldbankingworldfraud.com, on a CD for the people to listen to. And there's congressional people on it. There's Homeland Security's on it. Treasury agents are on it. Employees, bank executives. I mean, there are 15 tracks that I put out, 345 minutes of individuals just blabbing away.
Well, let's talk about after you've, what was the final point at HSBC that made you, what was the triggering event that said, I have to go outside the company to report this?
One of my employees said, John, it's doing no good to keep reporting. Why don't you just shut up and forget about it? I looked at him, and he was in Arabic. He was an Arabic person. I said, well, you might be right. I don't know. So I decided to take a walk and talk to an attorney. And the attorney got me hooked with another attorney, Napoli, Burns, and Ripka. And they signed a retainer agreement with me to go after the bank for being a whistleblower for retaliation against me. Not knowing that Mark Burns from the law firm, who's the senior attorney, was working with went to Homeland Security to Frank DiGregorio and refused to do anything after a few months. He was working on my case, but he refused to file reports. And I believe they were done purposely, right? How do you not report do a Sarbanes-Act reporting? How do you not file a labor dispute within the time frame that's supposed to be done as an attorney who's supposed to have done this for years and not do it? So my case can be thrown out of court. Was he paid off? I don't know. Was Homeland Security paid off? Well, they paid a $1.9 billion fee to pay off the government, and I don't call it a fine because it was not a fine. That fine, I told the U.S. government 4 years prior that they were going to pay that amount. They had it sitting in the bank accounts.
So the HSBC type of banks, I mean, that's not much money to them. That's like, I think if you steal $10 million and you have to pay $1,000 fine, that's not equitable. I mean, that's good business if you're the criminal, I guess. But as people thinking that we're working in a free country and that these banks are legitimate and not participating in a thing that's actually taking away everyone's freedom, I think it's naive at this point after so much evidence has come forward. And HSBC, this isn't the first time that someone has made accusations against that bank. Did you know about any prior? What did you know about HSBC at the time when you were escalating concerns about the potential for money laundering and all this other stuff?
I knew they were a bank from Britain, Hong Kong, Shanghai Banking Corporation, that they took over Marine Midland. That's about all they knew of them. And I knew they wanted to grow within the region that I was in, within the metropolitan area of New York. I did not know till after the fact that they were a bank of blood. They started out their blood money.
Yeah.
That's how they started.
Yeah. So once you decided to go outside the company, you've got a lawyer that won't do anything for you now. When did you go to the IRS and Department of Homeland Security and these other agencies that you thought might exert their authority to put a stop to this?
Well, in 2009 is when I first went to the district attorneys in Long Island. From then on, it was just like many agencies going forward, including Homeland Security, including the IRS, Department of Justice, and all. And no one would do anything. I mean, when first district attorneys I went to in Suffolk County there said, well, we can't do anything to help you, even though they're committing crimes here. And we can see that on paper. But since other district attorneys in Queens are handling the case, it'd be like two squirrels trying to get a nut off a tree. Neither squirrel is going to get the nut. And I looked at him and said, but that nut has already been bought and paid for.
What did the Department of Justice do regarding your claims?
Nothing. Nothing whatsoever. Loretta Lynch admitted that they received my information and did nothing with it. They did not prosecute the bank for money laundering. They didn't prosecute it for tax evasion or identity theft, even though they know it is taking place. In our own words, yes, we know this is being done, but we do not feel we should take appropriate action at this time.
Prior to your interactions with the Justice Department, what did you think they were going to do about this? What did you hope?
I was hoping they would shut them down. They would do what the law states to do. Go after these entities for committing these illegal crimes. Go after the executives for committing these illegal crimes. That is what they were supposed to do. That is the law. That is their job. They are not doing their job.
It's supposed to be equal justice under law. I thought that's what's on the front of the Supreme Court, if I recall.
Not under too big to fail. Too big to fail is we do what we want.
So the current Attorney General of the United States, Loretta Lynch, chose not to pursue this despite having the evidence, and you laid it out for them and they understand what they have. It's not like they're going to say in 10 years, oh, we didn't realize that Mr. Cruz had presented us with that quality and brand of information that was specific and applicable.
They did realize it. They admitted they realized it, but they didn't feel that they should take any legal action.
Did you ask yourself why they don't take any legal action?
I know why. Money went to them. Period.
Let's talk about former Attorney General Eric Holder. What was his involvement with your case?
My whole complaint to the SEC and the IRS all went to him. He refused to even respond. Totally blown blank. Did nothing. This is the largest crime ever that he could have ever handled and refused to handle it.
Wow. Are you aware of where Eric Holder worked prior to and after he left the Justice Department?
No.
He worked for a law firm, currently works for a law firm called Covington and Burling. And Covington and Burling shuttles through its revolving door people into the Justice Department, like Lanny Brewer, who was in one of these Rolling Stone articles, but he's also from the PBS Frontline documentary about the TARP bailouts. And what you find is Lanny Brewer and Eric Holder both get to go back to that law firm with cushy, like $4 million a year jobs. And the whole point is, yes, the people at Justice have to come from someplace, but they don't have to come from the too big to fail's attorneys. Goldman Sachs is a client of Covington and Burling. And then I believe that Mac McLarty, who's Kissinger Associates partner, used to be on the board or still is on the board of Covington and Burling, which ties it back to the Dope Inc. drug monopoly empire from the East India Company through the Hong Kong Shanghai Bank Corporation into today, where it's an Anglo-American establishment with the banks working top down, having historically laundered drug money and made money from the opium trade. And I think that the Wall Street facade is starting to crack, because when you look at the history of any of these too big to fail banks as they're listed in various resources, I think there's 29 of them, you start to see it's like a lot of these banks started out back in the 1800s during the opium wars. For instance, well, before I get into the history, I got a couple more questions about Eric Holder. So, Justice Department, this $1.9 billion fine that was supposedly paid by HSBC, that's missing. Is the Justice Department looking for that money? How do we know it was paid? Do they claim it was paid and they're just going to charge the shareholders? How's that work?
$1.9 billion supposedly fine. Nobody knows. Was it paid? Don't know. Who was it paid to? Don't know. Congress does not know where the money is. The Senate Judiciary Committee does not know where the money is. Who was it paid to? No one in the Justice Department will answer to it. The bank's not answering to it. So where's the money?
Are you familiar with the dark web project that was known as the Silk Road while it was running before that went to the Justice Department?
No.
The Silk Road was using the dark net as a free market model. So it was like an Amazon or eBay, but it was done on the dark web where people could buy and sell anything and deal with each other as individuals. And it used a digital currency for the most part called Bitcoin. The government busted it. This was under the Eric Holder administration. They had government agents that had infiltrated the Silk Road and had command and control. And then they hung the guy out to dry who had created the actual website and wasn't, accused of anyway. What I'm getting at is there's the Silk Road project was an attempt to create a free market in a space that's monopolized by these big banks. And unwittingly, he's competing. The creator of the website was competing with this monopoly that you're describing from the HSBC angle. And so the monopoly that is controlling these too big to fail banks gets its money historically from the drug trade. And when somebody goes out there and tries to create a parallel to that and doesn't know about that existing structure being in place, that individual got prosecuted by the government such that he got 2 life sentences and $180 million fine for trying to compete with their existing monopoly. So I guess my question that I'm building to is, if you had known the history of how the banks really work in a multinational black market fashion for their real profits, if you had known that, would you still have a career today, or would you be off evangelizing the truth as you are now?
I would not have a career today in banking, no.
Right.
I'd be working in credit unions otherwise, or doing something else.
Yeah, being part of the solution. It's like
Yes.
They prevent people from being part of the solution by, maintaining this illusion that there's a equal, rights system out there and freedom and justice isn't just an illusion in America. It's something real. But when you get down to it, the people who are trusted and sometimes appointed or elected in there to defend our rights aren't. These are the people who are driving the getaway car for these international criminals who are pillaging and plundering the wealth of America.
This is terrible. What do we do about it? Exactly what's happening. I mean, it seems like we're in a lose-lose situation with these individuals because they have the money, they have the power, they have our governments all working together against us.
Well, America's always been a place of ingenuity And I think once people start to realize the problems exist and they're not going to go away very easily without some work, and that really grandchildren and great-grandchildren of ours in the future are inheriting these problems if we don't do something about it now, I think we're doing the logical and reasonable thing. We're taking a little bit of time out of our schedule. We're comparing maps, and I'm saying, oh, here's what I've seen on my journey, and you're saying I've seen something very similar. And now we're starting to be able to triangulate where the problems are. And from there, I think we can start to get solutions out there. But I haven't seen you on the nightly news or in the newspaper. I don't really read or watch those things, but I haven't seen you out there on the big media channels. Do you think there's any connection between all this drug money laundering in these big banks and the failure of mass media for the most part in America, the corporate mass media definitely failing to really give you any recognition?
They don't want to. They're all in cahoots. The government's controlling the media, the mass media. They're keeping me off. And all this is mainstream, trying to get on, and they're not letting me on. But I think I'm going to have a way to get on.
Well, by getting on, what you're really just doing is showing people that there's another stream of information that the internet enables, and a little bit of technology and hard work on our end enables us to get information out there even further into the future than these cable news networks that aren't really giving you the light of day right now. But if you can get on one of them, I think you can get people to your website to read your book and to listen to these conversations, because what you're describing is not going to go away very easily until a lot of people start to recognize and understand through history how it permeates almost every aspect of our society today. Because when you've got lobbyists inflicting their interest on Congress instead of Congress taking the will, their actions from the will of the people, that is a very dangerous undercurrent that says everything above a certain level everything above us can just be bought off. They can buy off the local elections and rig the election boxes. They can take care of the electoral college. They they have a very tight control who becomes a governor, who even gets to be a candidate in front of people in the newspaper and on TV. And I think they're clutching sand and it's slipping through their fingers. There's a Star Wars line there about it somewhere. But the point is that the harder they squeeze, the more freedom starts to permeate, and people start to realize there is something going on here. And they realize that they're betrayed by the corporate mainstream media because they're not finding out about it there. And they're using their own search capabilities and using the internet finally for their own advantage to start to look up these topics and become, a little bit more educated on what happened in Benghazi, or what happened with the bailouts, or what happened with any of these situations that we're living through here in the early 21st century, that most people, it's just, like they're driving by something and it's scenery, when really these events have very realistic, harsh calamity type of consequences for people losing their houses, losing all their money, having their entire life's worth destroyed. So talk about how important is it for people to actually stop and take a look around and not just believe what they see on the media?
Well, you have to forget a lot of things that goes on in big media and deal with a lot of small media out there. Why should anybody vote for a presidential elected government official that gets money from terrorist organizations? Would you?
I don't.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm not voting Democrat. Sorry. I'm not voting for somebody who lies all their lives. I'm not voting for somebody who steals from people everything that they own. I'm not voting for somebody that says, make me your president. What do you want me to say? What do you want in life? Okay, I'll say that. I want somebody who's outspoken. I want somebody who will get in front of Congress and tell them where to go if they have to do. I want a president there for the people. And that's what we have to get in office. We can't have individuals in office, these congressmen. I have so many recordings of congressmen. I had a conversation with Chuck Schumer's office. It's pathetic, these people in office. We need somebody to say, something, you don't like what I have to say? Too bad. The Americans want this, and this is what we're doing.
Chuck Schumer is the guy who decided that the creator of the Silk Road was guilty before they even did the investigation. And Eric Holder says, congratulations, you've got your man. So this is the type of corruption that you've likewise, in a parallel fashion, you've noticed from your end. I think that one of the best pieces of media that I've seen recently that helps people understand what's going on, there's a YouTube video called The Veneer of Justice in the Kingdom of Crime. And it covers the TARP bailouts and how Covington and Burling and Eric Holder and Lanny Brewer and these other guys allowed Goldman Sachs and these other too big to fail banks to basically just plunder and pillage the American markets and leave us in a staggering amount of debt that we really can't afford to pay, and we don't know who we owe it to. But there it is.
Do we really have a debt? Do we really?
I never signed on to that. I don't know. It's just some numbers that they throw at us. I don't know what that means.
All the time. Where's the proof?
I didn't spend that money. Yeah, I always say if you had a magic checkbook that you could write out an amount, any amount you want, I'd say, well, I'll pay the national debt. Who do we owe it to? I'd like to know who we owe all that money to. That's a very important piece of information.
HSBC Bank laundered over $200 trillion. They're saying we owe like $20 trillion in debt. Isn't that like the 10% of that money just laundered? Isn't that like the cost of doing business?
I just did a podcast on the Iran-Contra scandal, which really turns into a history of drug money and laundering and cocaine and heroin importation by the intelligence agencies and the banks. But what I found through that were a similar pattern that has been building up to what you're noticing today. Like you've got the tip of the iceberg, and there's a whole line of continuity that funds that line of thinking where it's not just HSBC, it's all of those too big. That's why they're too big to fail and too rich to put in jail, because they're all participating. And you just worked at one company, but when you look into the history of these other companies, it's a very similar arrangement. And it's very well known. Those banks were created to do that. And oh, by the way, they also loan you money and give you a mortgage.
HSBC is a perfect scandal. They opened the accounts for Wells Fargo, Chase, Citi, across the world. I mean, for me to open an account for you in China would take me days. But if Wells Fargo wants to open an account for that you in HSBC, it takes 5 minutes.
Wow.
They control the whole situation. Why is it so easy? Because if the account information is coming from another entity, such as Wells Fargo or Chase, or another attorney like an escrow account I described to you, the bank has no liability there. The other entity does. The Wells Fargo does. The Chase does. Well, Wells Fargo would say then, oh, the customer came in and wanted an account, even if the customer's not there. They would already have documentation signed to open an account, and they just add other verbiage in it to open up more accounts. So therefore, you, the customer, just opened up accounts around the world without even knowing it.
You'd think that people would want to get like a text on their phone when that happens or something. Some sort of alert. Let me know when they're doing that. That sounds like a good service.
Yeah, not going to happen.
They'll sell it to you after they steal your identity. They're the same people that would come out with that service.
There is no such thing as safe identity. Our identity is stolen around the world.
Well,
we're allowing these big corporations to take our social security as our number, our address and everything, and go to China, Philippines, anywhere in the world and take our data. I mean, you go to Walgreens, you have to punch your phone number in, put your address and everything in to get a discount. These are not meant for discounts. This is meant for tracking purposes and knowing your identity around the world.
That's something we call social engineering. That's exactly what they're for. They're like, enter in your data. It's a lot easier than them trying to steal it, and it's more accurate sometimes. Correct.
It's just like enter in your email address. Well, your email address is attached to your date of birth, your driver's license, your everything. I mean, the Department of Motor Vehicles sells your identity around the world. Why is it an insurance company you get insurance with? You get insurance and they go, well, who's this person, this one in your building? Oh, who owns all these cars? I have all the VIN numbers to everybody in your building. If that's not identity theft, what is it?
I remember studying about the Soviet Gulag system and how they would try to collect information very much like this on people. And now it's just at everyone's fingertips. Anyone that has access to the internet can pretty much get all that information. What do you think that does in terms of our Bill of Rights and our ability to be free?
There is no freedom. Personal information is not free. It's out to the world. I mean, insurance companies want to start charging you for life insurance by what you surf on the internet. How are they going to get that information? Very simple. Follow your email address, link it to the IP addresses. Let's look at these IP addresses are looking at. What are you doing in this world? They're going to check out what you do everyday life on the computer. They're going to know you, who you are, what you do, who your friends are, who your family are, who your enemies are. They're going to know every person you come in contact with.
When in your schooling, in college or high school, did they teach you about the global drug trade and how it controls the banks?
No, they can't teach that at school. Banks teach you that.
Who did America fight in 1776 and 1812?
I don't remember.
We fought Britain.
Yes.
And after the War of 1812, when we barely won that war, but we won it. And Britain went off and focused on India and China, and it went away for almost a century. And then it comes back with its banking power, and it gets back into this country. And slowly but surely, they change the attitudes, values, behaviors, and beliefs of Americans to be more in line with an international monarchy run by a ruling family that can create other ruling families like the Saudis. The Saudi royal family got their royalness from the British, who have the right, through the divine right of kings to make other kings, right? So when we look at the situation today where there's a bunch of money being laundered, we have a problem with terrorism. We were attacked on 9/11. There's these missing pages from the 9/11 Commission report that talk about the Saudis. If they just taught us in school, it's like the Western technologies and banks set up the Saudi regime and use it as a proxy, and that the British Empire has always found it very successful to use proxy armies and fund the enemies of, say, their other enemy, America, to get us closer and closer and closer to the point where we're in bed with them so far financially and through the intelligence agencies that there's like it's like a war being waged on the American people that they don't know about, and nobody's really telling them about it.
That's exactly what's going on. There is a war against the American people, and it's all done through electronics. It's all done through taxing, identity theft, electronic monitoring. It's all done with our world of technology.
And it's being globalized under the guise of free trade. But in my studies of free trade, that originated with the British East India Company and its monopoly over China and India at the time. That's where free trade comes. It comes from the opium trade. This is what led into the Opium Wars, because the countries that were being subjugated didn't really want to be subjugated. And that leads to a problem of what do they do with all this wealth that they're plundering from those countries. That's where Hong Kong comes in. There was a great movie called Taipan that talks about, it's just a bunch of British people on an island trying to subvert the entire country of China using the opium trade. And it's like a biopic from back in the 1800s. But it's interesting to see how Hong Kong starts. Then you have this massive international London-owned bank, Hong Kong Shanghai Banking Corporation, HSBC. And then you have to understand its context and history from those opium wars. There's a lot of money that's coming through there. One of the big companies back then was called Jardine Matheson. And when I studied the history of Jardine Matheson, it became very, very clear how the British have just formalized this, what we think of as a black trade market, and they've just formalized it as another way that the empire was making money. More recently, the Ian Fleming family bank, I don't know if you know it, but Ian Fleming's grandfather was a billionaire who started Fleming's Bank, which helped to launder the money just like HSBC did. So recently, Fleming's Bank cut a deal with Jardine Matheson, so now it's Jardine Fleming. And so over hundreds of years, you see the opium money create the banks, and then they merge back in with the brokers of the opium. And it's all these historical arcs that would really give people a clear perspective that are denied to us in our education. Because if we were taught that was part of the global trade of the East India Company, a lot of us would have made different decisions in life and probably wouldn't work the places that we did.
True. What all you're talking about with all what has gone in the past leads to what's going on today, because nothing has changed, because they are too big to fail. Every one of those have gotten caught doing something wrong, have did the cost of business and paid the fine, which was no more than 10% of the business, and moved on and kept business going as normal. Because it's still going on today between drugs, terrorists, money laundering, tax evasion. All the big companies like HSBC, these big banks are still doing it. And they control the laws.
It's almost like if the corruption was a tree and we think the Justice Department is supposed to cut down the tree, the Justice Department just goes in and gives it a little trim, just a little off the top, not going to really hurt the tree. It's going to continue growing because at the end of the day, the money flows from the people who create it down to those who work for it. And so when you have people outside of our country owning the right to print money in our country, that gets contradicted in values. And I think that's what leads to the contradictions we're noticing. The things that are supposed to be done to maintain justice are not being done. And the stations and the people in those stations are not doing their jobs. So we have to suspect that maybe they're being bought off from above.
That's exactly right. What's happening is, and the Justice Department is not trimming the tree. The Justice Department is hanging the carrot there they want them to launder the money. They want them to do the crime because they want to get paid their cost of doing business. That is not a fine. That money goes to the government. The government does whatever they want with the money. They do not lower taxes for it. It's the same scenario with law enforcement around the world. Let's go out and give tickets, create quotas, give the individuals tickets for speeding, whatever it is, so we can make money off of it. I mean, the justice departments, the law enforcement should not make money off it. That money should be given back to the public through schooling, through education, things of that nature. And the people should vote on what to do with that money, not our government officials. That is extra money for them to say, hey, I know how to steal from people. Let me go out and give tickets. Let me go out and create fines. Let's make it so we make more money so we all can get more raises in our own government. So we all get paid off to run for elective offices. I mean, why do we have a president making $400 million a year going out to keep that job and spending $500 million to keep it? Whose money is he spending? The druggies, the terrorists, the money launderers? He's not spending his money going out and getting money. I mean, to have a presidential campaign collect millions and millions of money from terrorist organizations for a $400,000 job sounds a little suspicious to me. I mean, if I was going for a job in a school district to make $100,000 a year and I spent $1 million to get that job, $10 million to get that job, I mean, I'd be prosecuted.
I've noticed a trend since about 1938. There was an Operation Underworld where the intelligence agencies started working and merging with organized crime. And over the past, almost 100 years, I've noticed the crimes that are being committed escalating and the people being prosecuted fairly are declining. And I can't help but understand, or I can't help but observe that at this point, we're describing a total merger of organized crime in with the government being driven by the banks above it. When, in your experience, did you come across the international banking family known as the Rothschilds?
Through HSBC, we've heard about them, a little bit about them, but things like that, people don't really want to talk about in the banking system, banking world. They don't want to know about it. It's the same situation as Madoff. We all talked, we all laughed about all the stuff that used to be done with HSBC, with Madoff and all, about their involvement and everything, but nobody would ever really want to say their full involvement, really. You talk about, I talked to some financial advisors, and they all say, oh, yeah, we know about Madoff. Oh, that's all scum transactions and everything. Just put the people in it. Don't worry about it. That's where you leave it. And very sad situation.
I think it's another indicator that the banking system is in total control of everything from politics to education to the State Department, because we're not taught about this very powerful international banking family that funded basically all the big banks on that list. All the big banks that are too big to fail all originate over time, whether it's Wells Fargo or Bank of America or JP Morgan. They're all doing business with a centralized banking family. And it's because we're not taught about that in legitimate form. I mean, they have official biographies. You can get it in Barnes & Noble or Amazon, the History of the Rothschild Family 2-volume set by Neil Ferguson, who's an Oxford scholar. And so it is available to people who are in the know, but it's never advertised to anyone else to say, hey, here's the people who are actually buying off your politicians through the lobbyists and through the nonprofit, government tax-free foundations and all these other avenues that they're using to subvert the will of Americans and individuals all over the world.
Well, yes, this is how the whole banking world is created, but you have to remember, our banking laws are created by those individuals also. They create the laws, so they know the laws. They know they write the laws so they can do what they want to do. And then they train even law enforcement what the laws are to allow them what to do. Then they control the law agencies, the attorneys and all. Then those attorneys go into be law enforcement, knowing they have parachutes to come back to control the laws to make sure they don't get prosecuted. They control the whole family of banking. They control everything.
We think the creation of additional regulations impedes their ability to do this. Have you seen evidence that the creation of regulations, additional regulations that try to squelch this, are actually feeding the fire? Do they use it to their advantage?
They're the ones creating it. Of course, they create it, and it is made for their advantage. Of course it is. And the reason why I say that is because at HSBC, they created a culture of fraud. They created such a culture that all the illegal transactions were taking place, and the employees were the ones doing the transactions, but they created it in such a manner that each employee had certain jobs that no one knew that the other one was doing illegal activities. Not even that person was doing illegal activities. Example, we have accounts opened up under attorney escrow accounts, and you put them in somebody's portfolio and say, here, manage these accounts, but they're run through the attorney. The attorney doesn't even know these accounts are there really, but you don't talk to the attorneys and attorney escrow accounts. You just keep opening accounts for them. So they're adding accounts to their portfolio, saying, oh, great, I'm getting higher commissions now. So they're getting commissions and everything, but all this money is flowing through, and it's not legitimate money. And then it goes to a next person and say, oh, well, he believes there's a suspicious activity going on here, so let's look at it, and we'll notify corporate that suspicious activity, but corporate says, oh, we don't file suspicious activity reports. That's part of our cost of doing business because we're the main controller of everything. So the people below them are notified that we have done our research and found out the account to be satisfactory. Or they just send you an email saying, please do not do anything with this account. And you're done. You do nothing with it. So therefore, it's a legal system. It's a culture of fraud. Done.
How does the IMF and World Bank fit into this?
They're all part of the equation. It's all the same. It's all the same situation. They're all work together in cahoots to keep it as a culture of fraud. They're all making money. That's all it's about.
How does the United Nations drug laws tie into this?
They all work together. Every country, all the banking systems all around the world, all work together because they're all getting money from it. Every government out there is getting money within their country from all the illegal activities taking place within it.
Let's talk about drug money funding terrorism.
They're one and the same. So I understand that question. Drug money, terrorist money are all the same. The terrorists create the organizations for the drugs get sold, so it's all there. Now, if I want somebody to be a president and I want to become president, I just open up corporations, take my drug money, have the corporations that also have individuals donate money to my campaign, to the campaign person I want as president. I mean, and have them create a foundation, give it millions and millions of dollars, and let them go for president. I mean, that's the Clinton's foundation. I mean, it's all over the news. Clinton Foundation, terrorist money. Clinton says, what are you going to do? Hey, I can't control who gives me money. Yes, you can. If that's the way you feel, what are you going to do about terrorists? Nothing.
It's not even about who gave the money. It's about what favors were done on behalf of the government because she gave that money to Bill and Hillary.
Yes. Lots of favors. Lots of favors that cost us Americans trillions of dollars.
I mean, that's selling out. That's treason.
It is. Where's the prosecution?
Did you ever hear of Operation Gladio? Do you know what Operation Gladio was?
I've heard about it. I do not know a lot about it.
That's basically after World War II, where American intelligence really gets deep in bed with British intelligence, who had already been maintaining a worldwide heroin and cocaine trade. And then they just got better at it through spreading it through, shifting some of that weight onto American resources. And the Land for Destroyers agreement, where we had inherited all these British bases around the world, it now makes America the perfect tip of the spear to take over their intercontinental drug trade. And out of Operation Gladio, which was originally anti-communist, was the official reason behind it, you see that the people running the banks had funded the communists. And so what was it really doing? It became a worldwide mercenary and assassination network that also earned its money through arms trading and drug smuggling. And then what we see in American history as the enterprise during Iran-Contra is tied into that overall structure of Operation Gladio being a NATO operation that goes on to this day. Then there's a Saudi and Arab aspect to that, which whistleblower Sibel Edmonds terms as Operation Gladio B, where they had taken the Arab socialists and the Arab Nazis that were being cultured by MI6 and later sold to CIA through Dulles, and made operations out of that, using it as a proxy force to create disturbances in the Middle East and to have things as a strategy of tension. So it's the artificial funding of a proxy army to go against American and seemingly Western interests, when really it's just used as an invitation to go invade, to take over those markets, and to act as war as a racket.
Yes. The perfect way to go in and take over anybody is to control their funding, control their money. That's how you control a country, control their money. I mean, if they took away America's rights to stock markets, to transfer money around the world and everything, we'd be in big trouble. Any country would. Look at Russia today. They're being bombarded down because of all the sanctions you got against them and money. They're cutting back their money on them. So,
How did you get hooked up with Jerome Corsi at WorldNet Daily?
Jerome Corsi, I got hooked up through him, through certain friends, people that knew him, and I sent him some information, and he looked into my complaint about money laundering, and he started checking out accounts, social security numbers, accounts, and everything. He could not find anything legit. He was calling up companies. Is this so-and-so? Yes, I'm calling regarding this company. They're like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Everybody's just like, have no idea what you're talking about. There's a company with billions and trillions of dollars going through it. It was a hair salon phone number to a hair salon. I mean, you walk into an office of somebody. I'll give a perfect example. One guy, he put quite a few $1 million to his accounts, and he was running business out of his house. And I go to his house, and I go in his office, front door, office front door, huge house, going front door. There was a desk, a chair for him, and a chair for me. No filing cabinet, no paperwork, no nothing. You're doing a couple $100 million in business. Well, yeah. Well, and you want to get a loan for how much? Well, I need a $5 million loan. Okay, so I need you to fill out paperwork, and I need you to get your accounts receivables, accounts payables. And I look at everything. I go, oh, so your accounts payable each month equal maybe $100,000. Accounts receivable, about the same. So you're really not making any money. You got about $100,000 cash flow per month. But what are these transactions here for a few $1 million every day that you're not showing me? Well, I don't know. So chances you got. You know it's a fraudulent account. He has no idea what's going on with it. He has a little shack there, but he's doing illegal activities. So the bank is using more of his information to do more illegal activities. So,
how many people did you go to before you found Corsi, who was actually willing to look and investigate it on his own?
Oh my God. I sent out emails to dozens upon dozens. I mean, Wall Street said back off. Don't want nothing to do with you. Going all over Long Island. I mean, Newsday, WPIX, all of them. Nobody would want to talk to me anywhere. Why? Because they're all controlled. Government says what you can sponsor, what you cannot sponsor.
The fact is they get paid to do something else than what we think they're paid to do.
Correct. And nobody knows how they get their money.
Yeah. I found similar in my experience. I had gone to Lowell Bergman. He and a couple other people that worked for him looked at my case for about, I don't know, year and a half maybe. And then we're like, while we find that this might have happened, there's nothing we can do about it. I went through court. The defense attorneys were from Skadden Arps, which is the largest law firm in America. And it's who the U.S. government went to defend themselves in BCCI and Iran-Contra. So that's the pedigree. It's a Wall Street law firm that was created when J.P. Morgan wanted to do business that its white glove law firm, Polk and Wardell, wouldn't touch. And I only learned that because I was reading the J.P. Morgan biography. I think it's by Ron Chernow, House of Morgan. And in there, it talks about Skadden Arps. So as I'm just reading a book during my court case, I find out the origin of the attorneys I'm up against are basically that they didn't have enough gangsters on Wall Street, so they created another bigger law firm, to deal with these types of things. And so I was discouraged in finding that the world was not what it was taught to me, but it gave me an opportunity to grow in areas and to learn how to actually, if the independent journalism, the investigative journalism is not there, maybe I should do something about that. Maybe I should interview people and let them speak firsthand, commercial free, and get it out to people. And then it's just there on the internet and people can still find it in 20, 30 years if they don't censor everything and close this country down and send us all to gulags. I think there's a hope that, by having these discussions and other people watching them and sharing, that we can avoid the types of things that we've seen in recent history in the last 100 years, where the number one killer of human beings was democide, death by government. And usually they were socialist or communist regimes that were doing that. And that seems to be some of the leanings of the people who have taken control of this country at this point.
Exactly what's going on. So it's even more terrible when you find out that the attorney you hired is also in cahoots with the other side, and you can't get nowhere because they don't file reports or anything purposely to make your case fail.
Well, and I think that attorneys by nature have an obligation first to the court and the system that gives them their right to be an attorney through the Temple Bar in London. So, at any time, that's why I represented myself in court. Not only that reason, but the attorneys that would normally take a case like this wouldn't touch a case that touches so many people who are like, the biggest financier for George Bush and Dick Cheney. Right. When you have a company that's in bed and already getting away with illegal trading with Israel and all these other, it was under SEC. The company I work for was under SEC investigation when I called the SEC, and the SEC attorney told me we could put you in jail for sharing this information with us. So that's the type of wake up call that it's not given to us. We're not given exposure to that through high school education or college education, and you don't get that experience until you get out into the real world and actually challenge some of the myths we've been told.
It's kind of odd that you bring information to law enforcement and then they say they can put you in jail for that. But if you don't bring it to law enforcement, they can bring you in and prosecute you for aiding and abetting.
Right.
Criminals.
Yeah.
So where do you fall? It's like I sued the bank for wrongful termination, and my attorney didn't file Sarbanes-Oxley Act and he didn't file habeas suit. So therefore, since he didn't follow those two situations, the bank had every right to fire me, they said, in courts. I'm like, are you kidding me? And the judge, it was a 3-panel judge. The judge turned around to my attorney and the bank attorney, said, so, Mr. Cruz filed these complaints with law enforcement. My attorney said yes. And if he didn't file these complaints, he would be in jail. Correct. My attorney said yes. He turns around to the bank. But the bank has every right to fire Mr. Cruz for filing these complaints with law enforcement. And the bank attorney says yes. He goes, okay, well, that's the law.
Right. I don't think that's
laws.
Yeah, who made these laws? In my case, in Sarbanes-Oxley, so I was selling a product that would go to Wall Street banks, and they would be Sarbanes-Oxley certified as per the government mandate. And then I found out there's a backdoor in that software, which actually allows these banks and other financial institutions I was selling to delete information, making it look like it was never there in the first place. And I thought, wow, this is like having the Batmobile as your getaway car and seeing that there's, something's going to happen. If all these corporations are mandated to have this and it has a backdoor, somebody's going to use that backdoor and do something nefarious. And so what you see in the escalation is, the people that I reported the fraud to under Sarbanes-Oxley, I proved in court were the exact people that day who determined to terminate me, which is a violation under the law under Sarbanes-Oxley. You read the whistleblower law. If somebody retaliates against you after you have filed as a whistleblower, they're supposed to get prison time. But so that's like a safety net. You as a whistleblower feel safe because you've got this whistleblower law that's going to protect you. And then you find out that safety net's been cut or never existed in the first place. Correct.
That's exactly what they're doing. They want to get rid of the safety net so nobody can report them for any illegal activities taking place and give any documents, anything whatsoever to law enforcement. Because if they did, then they're going to jail. That's like, what's his name in Scotland? They want to prosecute him for giving the information to government officials. And they want to give him so many years in jail for it.
All for trying to do the right thing.
Yes.
And that's to discourage people from doing the right thing.
They do not want you doing the right thing, because the right thing for you to do is leave them alone and let them do what they want. That's the law they want.
They're saying that truth and justice are determined by who's bigger and stronger, not by logic and reason.
Exactly. Who's got the money? That's all you need to know. Whoever's got the money is bigger and stronger.
He who has the gold makes the rules?
Correct. They do.
What can we do about all this?
We need elected officials in office. We need to change laws. Laws should be voted by people, not by the government. If there's a law made to protect the government, it must be approved by the people. If it's not, then it should not be a law, because the laws are the people. The people control the laws. I mean, we have all these congressmen in office. They should not be getting money from lobbyists. They are paid to do a job. They should be living off their salaries, not off lobbyist money. They want to be elected. Use your own money to be elected. You should not be collecting hundreds of millions or billions of dollars from corporations around the world. It's not campaign contribution. It's bribes. And that's what all lobbyists does. They bribe. It's legal bribes to our government officials. I mean, if you're in a school district and somebody wants a job and you have 10 bidders on it, and somebody goes, I'll give you $5,000 so I can get this job, it's illegal. But if you're a congressman and you're there and a lobbyist comes along and says, hey, how about we give you $100 million towards your campaign and to help you get elected so you stay in office so I can get more work out of you, fine, let's do it. It's legal. Who created that law? Our own government officials in office collecting the money.
Well, I think we find when you investigate those laws that they're being written by multinational corporations who are exercising rights of corporate personhood that go beyond the rights of individual human beings.
Correct. Exactly what they're doing.
What about the lobbyists?
Lobbyists, I don't call them lobbyists. I mean, I call them bribers. They just bribe our government. It's all they do. I mean, they go into office. They go into an office and say, well, you want to be president? We'll help you get president. Here's $100 million your campaign, but after you're in, I want A, B, and C. All right. Or let's go. Let's collect money for our foundation. Let's collect $45 million from one organization or 7 terrorist organizations. As long as you do A, B, and C for us, we'll give you this money. You get in office, you promise you're going to do it, this and this for us. That is so wrong. Lobbyists was the worst thing that ever happened to this country, in my opinion. It's paying for whoever you want to be in office.
Well, didn't they just do campaign finance reform like a decade ago? Wasn't there already some reform that was supposed to take place and prevent us from having this? Is that like Sarbanes-Oxley, where that reform actually enabled more crime than Enron and Tyco and Anderson Consultant could have ever done?
It was, yeah, okay. They say it's supposed to be done to help prevent crimes, but they tell you about A, but they don't tell you about B. If it's done a different way, it's legal. So I'm not collecting money directly. I'm collecting money from other sources now. I'm going to collect it. HSBC is going to open up these other corporations. They're going to use the public's identity. So I'm not getting money from HSBC. We're just going to let you know it's coming from the public. It's coming from other corporations. They're donating this money. And I'm not doing anything for those people who gave me the money. I'm going to help HSBC not get prosecuted. But the money's not coming from HSBC. It's coming from these other entities. And the entities are all bogus.
And so the regulations actually end up being another veil to obscure what's going on and protect the people giving to all those politicians and lobbyists. It protects their identity to some extent, making it more complex to figure out what's going on, right?
Exactly what they do. They make up laws to create new diversions to get the money to where it belongs. So it actually puts the blame on other people, not on the actual entity it's coming from.
What should we do about the drug war?
Drug war. You're not going to do anything about drug war. Legalize it. Why not legalize drugs? Tax it. End it. I mean, make it so it's just like smoking. Certain ages, certain controls. Let the states handle it within themselves. People are going to do drugs. They're going to do drugs. But at least this way, you can control the revenue of it. You have more entities doing it. I mean, in Colorado, look at all the marijuana shops everywhere. And money goes to schools. Money goes for education. But they're making money off it now instead of just giving it, letting the drug lords make it, and let them keep the money for themselves. Hey, legalize it. I think it'd be so much better then. So.
Yeah, I mean, I've noticed through history that the people that create the black markets in the first place are usually the people who are gangster enough to run that black market. So the people that create the prohibition are then running the black market because they can charge exorbitant prices and there's no legal authority to appeal to if they rip you off.
No, correct. But the legalized law enforcement are the ones who do not want it legalized because they are making money by fines, penalties, and that's how they're making money there. Just law enforcement's making the money. That money's not getting trickled down to the economy, to the people. Now, if they made it so it was legal, then the money goes in the tax system, the money goes through the system, and people can make money off it on themselves. Make a profit. Everybody. Right now, it's just 1 or 2 people make everything.
I guess ending the drug war would probably put a crimp in that prisons for profit that are going on out there, just the same as the law enforcement's being militarized. You got the prisons for profit.
Yes. a law enforcement, you get them militarized because they just taking all the money and buying all this military equipment. Why? What humans out there have all this military equipment? Nobody. You got one man. Oh, he's out there holding up a store. So we're going to bring in 5 tanks to blow them up. That's our police department.
Do you think this this chain of corruption that you're describing suppresses the free market?
Yes. They control the market. There's no such thing as free market. They control the market 100% because it's all the market is them, not everyone.
So you can't get rid of the corruption in a system where the corruption is creating the system.
Correct.
Where can people learn more about your book, your audio CD, and everything that you're researching?
WorldBankingWorldFraud.com. This is the CD. I hope you can see it.
Yeah.
World Bank WBWF Voices. These are actual live voices. Government officials, Homeland Security, IRS, executives, employees. It's all there. Listen and know the truth. There's a lot more coming. This is just volume 1. 345 minutes are on this CD. I have hundreds upon hundreds to thousands of minutes. So you go to worldbankingworldfraud.com. My book is out, worldbankingworldfraud.com. The audio CD is out. The audio CD is the voice recordings, uncut, actual names, actual conversations, all there.
Well, John, I want to thank you for doing a comprehensive job of, trying to track down these criminals and for helping the audience better understand the nature of these too big to fail banks, too rich for jail type of personalities behind it. And I look forward to the second CD and to speaking with you again soon.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. You have a great day.